AI agents don't have burnout. They don't go on PTO. They're running 24/7. So what does that mean? Can we even equate them to human workers ever? Possibly.
Hi, my name is Ronan Burke.
I'm Anisha Thomas.
I'm Brie Valesky, and this is Good Question, a podcast about LLMs, AI agents, and ChatGPT prompts from your friends at Inscribe. So today, we're going to be talking about AI teammates. What is an AI teammate? Is ChatGPT an AI teammate? Does it need to be an AI teammate? And what does that mean for all of our human teammates? Anisha, you are a fearless head of people at Inscribe. You have a master's degree in organizational psychology. You've served in people operations roles at other AI companies. As someone with your education and your experience in people ops, how are you thinking about AI teammates?
Great question. I don't necessarily view AI as teammates or equate them to human team members or a peer or a colleague. I simply view it as a tool still to kind of help enable me to be the most effective in my job and my day-to-day. And I think it's just a bit uncomfortable for many of us to kind of think about AI as teammates when you start humanizing it a bit with actual names for AI agents or even calling them digital workers. And so we're still so early in this adoption process of AI. Like, we still have to have conversations of how we even utilize ChatGPT in our day-to-day, in our workplace. And so many conversations still need to be had. And so many questions are still unanswered that we're just not there yet.
Ronan, what about you? How are you thinking about AI teammates?
My mind immediately went to trying to define or understand what makes an AI teammate versus just using AI tools in a company. So, for example, if you give your team access to ChatGPT and they just interface with this like chatbot and you can ask it questions, or if you have a chatbot that's built on like all the internal knowledge in your company, all the internal documents, is that an AI teammate or is that just an AI tool that you use? I think for me that's still in the bucket of like AI like tool. So like to your point, Tanisha, like a lot of what's being deployed and utilized today in the real world, it's still very much so a tool. But when the definition of AI teammate, which really brings this question to life, is the future evolution of what these things will eventually become in terms of AI agents, which are a little bit more capable and same underlying building block. So the LLM GPT-4 behind ChatGPT is an extremely powerful advancement, and when you use that, package it up, and put in the kind of framework of an agent, that's when I think we can get into a really interesting place where they actually start behaving like human teammates, and that they have objectives, they have access to the same data, the same tooling, they can do multi-step planning, and they can do some reasoning and some feedback and self-improvement. But yeah, at that point, we have like a very interesting set of questions to answer in terms of how they'll interact with human teammates and so on. So yeah, I think we're still very much so in the tool phase, but I think the kind of AI agent teammate phase is really close. And yeah, it's going to have a pretty big impact on how we work.
I don't know if you guys have ever seen Back to the Future, but a movie made in 1985 where they go to the future in 2015 and there's flying cars. And that was a big deal. Everyone was like, oh my gosh, well, we have flying cars in 2015. And now we're in 2024. We don't have flying cars, but we're on the path to self-driving cars. So looking at what the future holds for us for AI agents and LLMs may not look exactly like an AI teammate. We're on a path to something, but I'm not sure we know exactly what it looks like yet. So on that note, should we ask ChatGPT what it thinks about AI teammates?
Let's do it. I'll share my screen. Cool. So what should we ask ChatGPT?
I find myself always defaulting to wanting to ask it like, how are you? Oh, which you already did. Great.
Great start.
Great. And ChatGPT's doing great. That's awesome. I wonder what determines how it responds to that question. Awesome. Okay. So now we're asking it how its job is going. My job is going well, it says. I'm here to assist you with any questions or tasks you have. How can I help you today? And then, Ronan, you just asked it, what is your job? Do you want to share what it responded with?
I mean, it's kind of, we just spoke about what makes an AI teammate or not, but the way it's kind of responding to me now is it's very human-like, as if it is already a teammate. So it said, my job is to assist with various tasks, answer questions, provide information, and engage in conversations on a wide range of topics. I'm here to help you with anything you need, whether it's learning something new, solving a problem, or just having a chat. What can I assist you with today? That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like me on Slack.
Oh, so the job is AI assistant.
Ooh,
It's interesting.
Interesting. Okay.
This potentially clashes with my own definition of like what makes an AI teammate or not. I mean, ChatGPT might already think it is a teammate.
Should we ask it if it thinks it's a teammate?
I asked it, are you my AI teammate? Yes, you can consider me a teammate.
Interesting. Okay, so it thinks of itself as an AI teammate, and now we're asking it how it feels about being an AI teammate. Anisha, do you want to read the response?
Yes, saying I don't have feelings in the way humans do, but I'm designed to be helpful and supportive. That's an interesting part, and I think that's that underlying key thing here is emotions and feelings and differentiating from humans when it comes to decision making.
Yeah, it is interesting in that, like, in a way, there may be a world where, like, what we have available to us today in ChatGPT, that can be considered an AI teammate, or at least in the Copilot definition of it, where they just work alongside you as a colleague, and you communicate them just like you would communicate with like a teammate via Slack. But yeah, as you mentioned, it will be limited in certain ways, especially for decision making. But yeah, it's very human-like, the interactions we're having here.
I'm curious how it would respond to a question of, how do you think you'd fit into a company culture?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think that's the other piece, behaviors in alignment to values.
Very interesting. So it highlights that it could contribute to culture by providing reliable and consistent support, enhancing productivity. And it's really highlighting like efficiency, availability, collaboration, communication, which are all elements of what contributes to a culture. Anisha, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm actually interested if we put in like our values to see specifically like how AI can adapt to our company culture. I guess through the responses, right? Are the responses grounded? Is ChatGPT nailing the details? Do they know our customers? Like, I think that's what we're going to have to get for me to actually change maybe my stance on AI being teammates here.
It is interesting. I asked the question, are you adaptable to a particular company culture? And then it says it can. Yes, I can be adapted to fit the specific needs and culture of a company. Here are some ways I can align with different company cultures. And the first point is customization. I can be programmed and customized to follow specific protocols, language styles, and communication preferences unique to your company. So in a way, like, there could be a world where you have a culture agent, where it's like this like AI teammate that displays the company values perfectly at all times, and humans can be inspired by that AI teammate. That'd be pretty weird, but it sounds like it's confident it can do so. But I think that's where the question of, like, how do AI teammates interact with everybody else, and ultimately they probably won't be given the same level of responsibilities and remit, such that, like, the ultimate decisions will still be made by humans and so on. But yeah, like, to some extent, like, these folks, I just refer to agents as folks, can sound like they can be adapted, like, to kind of like the tone in which they communicate the things they care about, how they do things.
Yeah, it's really interesting. This last point, it says whether a company values innovation, customer service, efficiency, or collaboration, I can emphasize and support these values in my interactions and tasks. It makes me think of, like, how do you program or write a recipe for how an entity, a person or AI entity, can exhibit or act in the way that aligns with your values.
I just asked the question of would you be able to align with Inscribe's company value of nailing the details or nail the details? And, I said absolutely, and it gave a couple of examples, but, it does sound plausible. Like you just give, an agent the context of what a company's values is. You need to give it more than just like the title of nail the details. You might need to give a couple of paragraphs describing the nature of what that value means and then some examples, and it'll be able to kind of adhere to that going forward, similar to how, these agents can be given a huge amount of context and objectives and they can refer back to. Like, for example, in a compliance use case, agents can interpret huge policy documents and then, pull upon particular cases when needed and be pretty good at doing that.
Okay, I feel like it's easier for a machine to be detail oriented than maybe some of our other values. How would it respond if we ask if it can align to our company value of be grounded?
It's pretty confident. I'll say I'm not convinced. Are you sure? Oh, I made a mistake. I said I'm convinced instead of I'm not convinced.
Oh, I like how it's saying, I understand your hesitation. It feels like an eerily human response.
Yeah. I'm just like really trying to think in like a recruiting scenario or interview scenario of like a value session, and we're asking a human, show me examples of how you have embodied being grounded. And I'm feeling like this is exactly what ChatGPT is doing here. I sense the hesitation, and here we go. Here's my rebuttal.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's like it's a very composed interviewee in that case. Like these are pretty good responses. Yeah. It's impressive.
It is impressive, and I think it's really interesting how when we asked it how it would embody the value, one of the examples it says was empathy and understanding. Understanding the needs and concerns of users, offering support that is both relevant and meaningful. The idea of like ChatGPT having empathy is very interesting because you typically think of empathy as something where you can relate to the feelings that or experiences that someone is having. And given that ChatGPT doesn't have feelings or have human experiences, can it really be empathetic?
Yeah, like it says, I understand your hesitation, but previously it said it doesn't have feelings the way humans do.
I think on the surface, like easy to feel like, oh, that's convincing, but I still think we're really far from really replicating human behaviors. Like I think we can automate a lot of workflows of like a human job, but the human brain and feelings it's so complex.
Yeah, and it's also worth noting as well, and like future AI teammates we might not need to talk to them via chat interface. I think that's what there's a big leap. Like we might have AI teammates or AI agents in the future that you can just give them a set of objectives and then monitor them the way you'd monitor a machine or fly an airplane, in a way that like you're more just like overseeing metrics and giving it some like natural language input, but more so like it could be a set of directives, like having these kind of very human-like conversations with these agents. Like it's a pretty easy thing for it to do kind of a reasonably good and / convincing job at. But yeah, like it's to get to the point where they can have a real chance of being an AI teammate. They need to do more than just kind of surface level conversation that we're having with it now.
Yeah, this is just my hypothesis, but the greater the degree of decisions that we enable these AI agents to make, the more important it will be for the ability to communicate and understand that decision making. So I think obviously not this like yeah, to your point, we're making small talk with ChatGPT right now. But I do feel that like that ability to communicate and create a shared understanding in natural language will be, I don't know, continue to be just such an important part of how we think about AI agents in the future. But I might also be biased because I'm in marketing and communication is really important to everything I do. I want to ask it one more question, which is, how would you want your performance to be measured as an AI teammate? Okay, so it's offering a couple of different options. It's not saying how it would want to be measured, but it's just giving options for how we could measure its performance, the accuracy of its responses, the efficiency of how it completes tasks, the user satisfaction. Could we give it, an NPS score or a CSAT? Consistency, adaptability, engagement, error rate. So very, very interesting. Obviously, I think performance metrics would vary depending on what the AI teammate or AI agent is actually expected to perform, but it seems to have some awareness of its own performance and how we could objectively measure that.
Yeah, and I noticed ChatGPT kind of refers to similar principles or ways of measuring, like accuracy keeps coming up, efficiency keeps coming up, consistency. So I wonder if that's like how you can rely on ChatGPT.
Yeah, and I think that's the reality of this. It's going to be a journey throughout every industry and most companies within those industries to like figure out how they want to adapt and adopt to this change. And I think in the short term, like having access to these types of like chat interfaces, whether it's ChatGPT based on public data or like your own internal chat based on your own internal documentation, it's a great first step. It's like it's well within the technical possibilities of many vendors now to offer these types of solutions, and it's a great first step to adding like AI teammates to your business. And I think as we kind of progress through the next phase, then it'll be about identifying which parts of the workforce are kind of well placed to be to benefit from AI teammates and agents. And I think my own personal opinion on that is it'll be roles where there's like a high degree of standardization, but also like a sufficient amount of like ambiguity such that they historically needed a lot of like human input to handle the edge cases and nuances and so on. And a lot of these roles, they tend to be roles where they're in a kind of interesting pinch point where it's the business often can't afford to have a ton of human input on all these decisions because the cost of offering the product just doesn't make sense if there's too much human interconnectedness there. And so I think the sweet spot will be those cases where agents can alleviate that cost and efficiency pressure and then allow the human agents to kind of have a more manageable workload, but also elevate their own abilities to kind of higher order tasks. But yeah, there's going to be a really interesting journey as we move along there. But yeah, I think there's a couple of steps on the way.
Very, very interesting. Well, I think we can say goodbye to ChatGPT for now and switch over to looking at what's in the news related to AI agents and AI teammates. Anisha, I'd be curious to know what's caught your eye lately.
Yeah, so something that's recently caught my eye in the world of AI and actually HR tech is Lattice's announcement to give digital workers employees records in their platform. So you essentially can onboard AI, give AI goals, and measure its performance, like very similarly to how you would be measuring our own human team members. And this actually sparked a ton of conversation and actually backlash from the HR community around the impact that this just has on human jobs and the ethical considerations of treating AI as human employees. And I think it's very bold and it is a little bit of actually a peek into the future. And I really actually do understand Sarah, CEO of Lattice's like intent here of what they're trying to do, but I don't really necessarily understand what problem we're trying to solve right now. Like, as we've been just like discussing, like we're still so early in this adoption of AI and just like even understanding the capabilities of what AI agents can do, that we're kind of skipping a few steps here and adding these digital workers into an org chart. I'm glad that they have like listened to the community and have rolled this back and have like deeper conversations of like what we need as HR representatives and the community and what the tech world needs. But at least it started these discussions, like this discussion that we're having today. Like, we do need to have these discussions of like, what future world are we building towards? What problems are we trying to solve with AI agents? And do we treat them as teammates? Great conversation starter.
Yeah, definitely. Ronan, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts, but just from my own perspective as a marketer, I thought it was a pretty brilliant marketing move. If you want to be included in the conversation, an easy way to do that is to say something provocative, and they did. And to your point, Anisha, they've really started some very compelling conversations and brought up some really good questions, you could say. But Ronan, what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with what you both said. I think it definitely puts a stake in the ground for them that they want to be involved in this future. And yeah, I think it got a lot of companies thinking about, AI teammates, as unfair or as, probably untrue of a comparison it is to put them on the same playing field as human contributors on a team. It definitely got people thinking. But yeah, I think, when these types of announcements come out from a company or new product announcements in general, I kind of put them into two buckets, like vision-based versus customer-based. And this very much so sounds like it's in the vision-based stuff for, some of the points you're making, Anisha, where I find it really hard to believe customers would have been asking for this feature at all, never mind to a large enough extent to warrant a product announcement like this. However, I do think it was probably justified on the basis that they could see this is where the future is going, not based on what their customers are doing, but just where they were looking across the industry. And, to our conversation a minutes ago, we're obviously not there yet. And we've probably have a couple of years before we'll need a performance management system to kind of help manage these agents. But, even then, I'm not entirely sure a performance management tool like that will be the best place to get started. For example, these agents they'll probably still have their own interfaces based on the vertical. Setting objectives via Lattice would be an employee management platform would be very interesting, but it'd have to have connections into each of the sub agents and so on. And so an ERP platform could help with this, but it's quite a interesting vision for the future. But I think the first step is just being able to set these objectives via a normal kind of SaaS product. But yeah, I think it does also kind of paint the future as well, where every person at a company or every individual contributor potentially could become a manager, and that these AI teammates, or I'm not sure what terminology Lattice were using, but there is a world where you can have spin up 4 or 5 team members for your own work on a day-to-day basis, and then start kind of having them help you achieve your own goals. And that is a huge amount of byproduct impact, such as will these individual contributors be able to upskill themselves to manage these agents and AI agents? And I think for what it's worth, they'll be, and we don't know how easy or difficult they're going to be to manage, but I do think that they will be very different. They'll be unpredictable in different ways, and they'll have edge cases and so on. But I think it represents a very interesting, powerful opportunity where companies and teams and individuals will be able to achieve so much. It's hard to comprehend the idea that every individual could have 5 AI agents reporting into them, and their productivity output could increases by a couple of orders of magnitude.
there's so many different elements to this conversation where even when we think about what you just touched on, Ronan, about like how do we manage these AI teammates, or I believe Lattice referred to them as digital workers, which is interesting. But it's even when we think about management philosophy, I'm a big believer in that each team member requires a different style of management because everyone's an individual and they have their own approaches, and different approaches help them grow. But then, when you think about how do you figure out how to effectively manage an AI teammate or digital worker, but also it's interesting because then like a reason why you want to be a good manager to a human worker is because you want them to have a good experience, because if they don't, they might leave. But that's not necessarily, I guess, a risk of an AI teammate. So there's just like so many different avenues to think about when we kind of go down this path. Anisha, I'm curious if you had any thoughts about that too, about managing digital workers.
Yeah. I'm like, where do I even begin?
Right?
There's too many spots because the conversation also is AI agents don't have burnout. They don't go on PTO. Like they're running 24/7. So what does that mean and look like? And once again, going back to the conversation, can we even equate them to human workers ever? Possibly. Yeah. But then that's like the whole thing where this vision that Lattice has of like where the world's going to go. It's scary, but I think we're kind of headed on that journey. To Ronan's point, I think everyone's roles will be evolving and enhancing when it comes to what it means to work with AI agents.
Yeah, on that point of like, should we equate AI teammates to human teammates? I think there's a very, like in my own like personal opinion, like they shouldn't. I mean, I think it's just morally and ethically, I don't think it's right to put, they treat them as like the same thing in the same bucket. They're very much so will always be tools, and we shouldn't desire or want them to be anything more than that. I mean, for most practical purposes, that's what's going to happen. But like people might get into these like philosophical debates about it, and I'm in like the bucket that these will always be tools. But yeah, I think an example of where these like agents might not be just like perfect employees is, one kind of case would be, these systems like ChatGPT now is like this idea of like memory. So when you have a conversation with it, the context kind of builds up over time. But like, for example, let's say you kind of direct these agents to work on a project and they start making incorrect conclusions or kind of latching onto the wrong concepts. And like before you know, you might have 5 agents who are accelerating towards something like the wrong direction in a project. And then however, they might have a lot of good context as well, but the only thing you know how to do is reset it. But if you reset it, you lose all the benefits. So what you try to do is patch it to fix it. But like actually patching up the memory of a team of AI agents could actually just be a huge time sink for humans. And so like that's like one example where, a human could be a bad manager of agents and it could just end up wasting their time.
Yeah, see, I haven't even gotten that far in my own personal journey of thinking of managing AI agents and like where it can go wrong. I think I'm just still on the forefront of just like, hi, ChatGPT, can you like rewrite this like email for me? And so, but actually already like through my own experiences of that, it doesn't fully have like my tone. And I am actually sitting there and editing it until it kind of really adapts to like my style. And so there is an element like from a managing standpoint of training, like that is a huge piece of it and time spent there.
Yeah, it's really interesting. One like current example that my mind immediately goes to is we use an SEO research and writing tool here at Inscribe. In the past, a lot of companies would have had a full SEO team of SEO analysts and SEO writers and then an SEO editor. And really what's happened is, I have become the SEO analyst and editor. But this tool itself also does a little bit of the SEO analysis and all of the SEO writing. To your point, still, like I'm actually really impressed with the tool's like writing style. It's much more advanced than ChatGPT. It sounds very human. But I still go through and I have to edit it. I have to make sure it aligns with our brand and style, kind of like I would do with a freelance SEO writer. So there is this element of I'm still the editor slash manager, but true, we don't have a physical person writing those SEO articles anymore. But it's incredibly efficient and honestly blows my mind because this SEO tool will write 4 or 5 articles for me at once. So instead of having a team of 5 writers writing 1 article each, I have one tool writing 5 articles at one time. And then when I even think about if I were to measure the performance of that tool, what would I measure it on? Would I measure it on the number of articles it's producing? It's got limitless scalability, so I don't know if that's an effective measurement. Would I measure it on the amount of organic search traffic that it's helping me gain? I measure that in a separate tool, Google Analytics, so I'm still in that role of like measuring the performance of organic search, but it's really interesting. There's small ways where we can kind of see how it's being folded into our day-to-day workflows, but it still doesn't feel anything like a teammate to me. It still just feels like a really efficient and almost magical tool.
I will ask, Brie, do you miss, though, working with a team, a human team?
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of an element of like enjoying talking about why people make certain writing decisions or why they utilized a certain like syntactical structure or grammar choices. But I've really just adapted to, I have other people on my team, on the revenue team, that now I spend talking to about other things. And I'm still really interested in writing in my personal life. So I spend a lot of time thinking and talking about it there. Really interesting, just announcement from Lattice, really interesting to see how they reacted to everyone else's reactions, and just curious to see where that conversation goes. I found a very interesting study that I want to get both of your take on. It's from Harvard Business Review, and it said when AI teammates come on board, performance drops. So a little bit of background here. Researchers at Columbia and Harvard teamed up to investigate the impact of they use the term AI teammates on group productivity and human worker performance. They performed an observational study and used the video game Mario Party as a controlled environment to stimulate team interactions. Are either of you familiar with the video game Mario Party?
Oh, yeah.
I've heard of it, but never played it.
Oh, Ronan, you are missing out. It's obviously a game that exists in the Super Mario universe. It's a lot of fun, played a huge role in my childhood. But for those who aren't familiar with the game, it is a game that you can play with up to 4 other players, and a ton of the challenges in the game require cooperation and collaboration among the team members. So that allowed researchers to measure how human players interacted with AI in a familiar, engaging setting. And what they did was they started with all human players and then slowly would replace human players with AI players. And I was actually really surprised at the findings. First, they saw productivity decline. I'm actually really curious how they measure productivity in Mario Party, but they found that teams that included AI performed worse than the all-human teams, highlighting a decline in overall group productivity. They saw negative observer effects. So the human team members who watched AI teammates also showed reduced motivation in addition to productivity, suggesting some psychological impacts beyond direct interaction. And then finally, they observed that the presence of AI altered the team dynamics, reducing interpersonal reactions, motivation, and trust among human teammates. Anisha, I'll go to you first. I mean, what are your thoughts on all of that?
I think this just goes back to like, we're so early. My mind was to like, wow, productivity drop when you would think it would increase. So that's definitely surprising. And there's so much here. It's just, we're still trying to understand, how do you adopt AI? I think people are still super skeptical of what AI is and how you can trust it, and should you trust it? And I'm a little shocked still right now because I definitely would have thought you would see an increase in productivity instead.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised too, especially with my own experience, like adopting AI into my workflows. But I totally agree with you. My first thought then after the surprise was like, we're just still so early in our ubiquitous adoption of AI across our lives. As with every new technology, people are wary. And rightfully so. I think almost every technological innovation that you can think of from the past, atomic energy, electricity, they've been both very productive, but also sometimes destructive in certain ways for society. And then my third thought was also exactly what you just said of just, again, me going back to the communication aspect, the importance of explainability. Trust is often really built through a shared understanding. So the more we can enable our models and AI agents to explain their thoughts and reasoning, my hypothesis is that the easier it will be for their human counterparts to trust them. So I think it'll be interesting to see if we really do reach that point. But Ronan, I'm very keen to hear your thoughts here.
Yeah, I think first thing that comes to mind here is just just because they conducted a study and they called it research, doesn't you seem to be careful about what conclusions are drawn from it. Like it's very easy, it was a limited set of participants and then for a particular game. And the question is how does that set of participants actually relate to the entire population and all use cases, and how does that game translate to all the other applications as well? And so I think what this highlights the importance of is even as humans, we still need to be aware of what we're consuming and what research we consume and what's actually fair to conclude from it. I think it's very easy to kind of look at a study and then extrapolate it out to what that might mean for all AI applications, because I think intuitively this actually doesn't seem right. And so I think that's why it's kind of perhaps provocative and kind of can gain some level of attention, which is often what these outlets want to do as well. So that's the first caveat I put on this, it's just skepticism. But then secondly, just addressing the point that the particular participants or a particular game, if we applied this more participants in different applications, I think what might be different is just we might need to acknowledge that the ways of working with these agents will need to change. And so maybe these participants were treating or expecting the AI agents to kind of or the AI teammates or the AI to kind of be work in the teams in the same way a human would, but that might not be possible in the way we work. Might need to change, but that could take time. And for a study, for example, they might not have had much time to adapt. But let's say if they conducted a study after a year of them working with these AI teammates, I think their performance productivity would be different. That's a hunch, no data to back it up. I haven't performed that study, but I think people do get used to doing things a certain way. But when they adopted a new way of doing things, they learn how to harness the power. And I think that's going to be true in this case, but also in just other parts of the industries and applications as well. And so, or another way of saying this is that they may have been the productivity might have declined because of their different ways of working, or they're just might have been distracted by the novelty of AI, and it's one a multitude of reasons. But yeah, I think in the short term, though, I think that's a very important thing to kind of factor in. Is we shouldn't be deploying these systems in such a way that they would affect human performance or the trust that humans have between each other and so on. And I think in commercial and production settings, these are the considerations people need to have in mind, versus kind of just sandboxed studies.
Yeah, I agree. I think it goes back to this concept of training, not only training AI, but training our own team members of how to utilize AI effectively. And that adoption piece, I remember going back to when I first got my iPhone, I had no idea how to use it. So I probably was way less productive in the beginning of how I used my phone versus now texting right away. I know how to close all these apps at one time. And so it's just, once you become a power user, there's deep expertise that needs to happen as well as part of this journey and adoption of AI on the human side of things.
Totally. And I also like how we highlighted it's one study in one specific instance. I mean, I will say Mario Party is a very high stakes, very competitive game. So Mario Party players might already be more wary of teammates in general than perhaps the average human user of AI. All right. Well, we have to move on to our lightning round, as much as I feel like we could keep talking about this all day. What kind of agent do you need in your life, and what are you going to name it? Anisha, I'll start with you.
Yeah, this is a fun one. But I actually need a recipe generator in my life right now. Basically, coming up with recipes for breakfast snack, lunch snack, dinner for my toddler based on the ingredients that we have in our fridge and that she'll actually eat. So it might already be out there, but I call it Nom Nom.
I love it. The marketing is already there. It sells itself.
She literally is like, Nom Nom, Nom Nom. And like, she gets louder and louder if we don't feed her. So
I feel like we already have the marketing campaign envisioned for this as well. Ronan, I'll go to you next.
Yeah, I love this lightning question every podcast we have. I'll have to think of a new agent idea. My last agent idea was like, I'm moving to a new apartment soon and I need to change my address in so many different areas. It'd be great as an agent who could just figure out what address I need to change and then go execute on that. But yeah, this week, I think one that I've been thinking about lately is just a general purpose life agent, which just kind of consumes the content I consume, but also a lot of like periphery content in and around what I already consume, but I don't have time to read. So like, for example, like there's a couple of articles, I might read one, but what about all the linked articles to that? It'd be great if we could kind of read those, synthesize those and make any recommendations, and then like maybe like some actions if I give it an objective. For example, if we want to learn more about a particular advancement or area, like it'd be cool if we just go away and then kind of, do those things or communicate with people to get certain information. But equally so, like a general consumer or general purpose personal agent should just be doing a lot more than that as well. It could be like, everyday tasks around property stuff. Like this is where like you get into a really interesting point of like, do you have the right data inputs and sensors in your life? Like, for example, like Google Meta's Ray-Ban sunglasses with a camera functionality. If you're walking around the house and you realize it was not as tidy as you'd like it, it should trigger off a Roomba or something. Or like you open the fridge and it's empty, it should order what it sees as empty. But similarly, you can kind of have like other sensors around your property too, as well, like cameras and stuff like that could help. So anyway, that's a very ambitious agent. I'm pretty sure Apple or somebody like that might need to build it. But what I call it, I don't know, the everything agent or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I call it Ronan.
The Ronan.
Yeah. Everybody's first name could, you could rename the agent. Like everybody has their own agent named after themselves. So
oh my gosh,
your name Junior or something.
I was going to call it the Jetson because the world that you're describing just made me think of the Jetsons cartoon. I'm like, wow, the future really is here. So very interesting. Mine is pretty similar to Anisha's, but I don't even need to feed a toddler. I'm just trying to feed myself and my partner, but I need it to be like an aggregate, like meal planner. And then based on the meals I want to do, generate the recipes and then generate a grocery list for my partner, because those are all my chores as it relates to meals in our household. And so I want it to do that. I actually did do something like that with ChatGPT, where I was like, can you give me a chili recipe and then tell me the ingredients? But then I just manually added them to my grocery list. So I don't have a name for that one. So Anisha, you win the agent marketing game.
That's a great name.
It is. It's great. Cool. Well, thanks for everyone for tuning in today. We really appreciate every time you come back to hear our thoughts and questions. Hope you all laughed a little bit and learned a lot. Cheers.
Thanks all.
Yep, thanks.
Anisha, is someone like mowing a lawn?
Yes, I know. I was like looking for where the mute button is.
Is it a leaf blower or a lawnmower?
I don't.
You can't
see
tell?
him.
Okay.
Can't tell. But, he's mowing.
Okay, so it might be a while.